a peninsula where Europe meets Africa, where civilizations have collided, conquered, and created one of history's most dramatic stories. This is Spain, a nation whose history reads like an epic novel filled with warriors, explorers, kings, and revolutionaries. From ancient cave paintings to modern democracy, Spain's journey spans millennia and continents, shaping not just Europe, but the entire world. What you're about to discover isn't just the story of a country. It's the tale of an empire that once controlled territories on every known continent. A civilization that gave birth to some of history's greatest explorers, and a people who've weathered conquests, civil wars, and dictatorships to emerge as a vibrant democracy. But how did a collection of warring tribes on the Iberian Peninsula become the first global superpower? The answer lies buried in centuries of conquest, ambition, and survival. Our story begins not with Spanish kings or conquistadors, but with some of humanity's earliest artists. Deep in the caves of Altamira and El Castillo, prehistoric peoples left behind stunning paintings that still captivate us today. These weren't just random drawings, they were sophisticated artistic expressions created over 40,000 years ago, making them among the oldest known cave art in the world. Already, the Iberian Peninsula was becoming a crossroads of human civilization. But the real drama began when the peninsula caught the attention of Mediterranean powers. The Phoenicians arrived first, establishing trading posts along the coast around 1100 BCE. They were followed by the Greeks, who brought their own culture and innovations. However, it was the Carthaginians who truly transformed the region, turning much of southern Spain into a Carthaginian stronghold under the brilliant general Hamilcar Barca. Yet even this was merely the prelude to an empire that would define Spain for centuries. When Rome turned its hungry gaze toward the Iberian Peninsula, the stage was set for a confrontation that would reshape the Mediterranean world. The Second Punic War erupted when Hannibal, Hamilcar's son, captured the Roman ally city of Saguntum. But while Hannibal was crossing the Alps with his elephants to attack Rome itself, the Romans were methodically conquering his homeland. The Roman conquest wasn't swift. It took them over 200 years to fully subdue the fierce Iberian tribes. The Lusitanians and Celtiberians fought with legendary courage, producing heroes like Viriathus, who led a guerrilla war against Rome for 8 years. When the Romans finally triumphed, they didn't just conquer Spain, they transformed it. Roman roads, aqueducts, and cities sprouted across the landscape. Latin evolved into what would become Spanish, Portuguese, and Catalan. Spain became so thoroughly Romanized that it produced 3 Roman emperors: Trajan, Hadrian, and Theodosius. Christianity spread through Roman Spain, but this religious revolution was nothing compared to what came next. As the Western Roman Empire crumbled in the 5th century, Germanic tribes called the Visigoths swept in to fill the void. For nearly 3 centuries, Visigothic kings ruled from their capital in Toledo, creating the first unified kingdom that roughly corresponded to modern Spain and Portugal. But in 711 CE, everything changed again. A Berber general named Tariq ibn Ziyad landed on the rock that would bear his name, Gibraltar, and launched an invasion that would alter Spanish history forever. The Visigothic kingdom collapsed almost overnight. King Roderick died fighting at the Battle of Guadalete, and within 7 years Muslim armies had conquered nearly the entire peninsula. This wasn't just a military conquest. It was a civilizational transformation. Al-Andalus, as Muslim Spain was known, became one of Europe's most sophisticated societies. In cities like Córdoba, Seville, and Granada, Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived in relative harmony, creating a golden age of learning, art, and architecture. The Great Mosque of Córdoba, with its forest of red and white striped arches, still stands as a testament to this era's magnificence. Muslim scholars translated ancient Greek texts, advanced mathematics and medicine, and developed new agricultural techniques that transformed the Spanish landscape. Yet even as Al-Andalus flourished, a counter-narrative was emerging in the mountain kingdoms of the north. Christian kings in Asturias, Leon, Castile, and Aragon began what they called the Reconquista, the Reconquest. This wasn't a swift campaign, but a centuries-long struggle that would define Spanish identity. Legendary figures like El Cid Campeador became symbols of Christian resistance, even as the reality was often more complex, with Christian and Muslim rulers sometimes allying against common enemies. The Reconquista accelerated in the 11th century, as Muslim Spain fragmented into competing kingdoms called taifas. Christian armies pushed south, capturing Toledo in 1085 and establishing it as a center of cultural exchange where Christian, Muslim, and Jewish scholars worked together. But the Muslims weren't finished. Waves of fundamentalist armies from North Africa, first the Almoravids, then the Almohads, reinvigorated Muslim resistance and pushed the Christians back. The tide finally turned in 1212 at the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa, where a coalition of Christian kingdoms decisively defeated the Almohads. From that point, Muslim power in Spain entered terminal decline. Córdoba fell in 1236, Seville in 1248, leaving only the Kingdom of Granada clinging to survival in the south. As the Reconquista neared its end, a marriage would reshape not just Spain, but the entire world. In 1469, Princess Isabella of Castile married Prince Ferdinand of Aragon, uniting Spain's two most powerful kingdoms. But this wasn't just any royal wedding, it was the foundation of the Spanish Empire. Isabella and Ferdinand, known as the Catholic Monarchs, didn't just rule their kingdoms. They transformed them into a unified, centralized state with unprecedented power and ambition. Their first major act was completing the Reconquista. On January 2, 1492, Granada surrendered, ending nearly 8 centuries of Muslim rule in Spain. But the Catholic monarchs weren't content with military victory. They wanted religious unity. In the same year, they expelled all Jews who refused to convert to Christianity, devastating Spain's Jewish community and depriving the kingdom of invaluable skills and knowledge. Yet 1492 would be remembered for something even more momentous. A Genoese navigator named Christopher Columbus convinced Isabella to fund his crazy scheme to reach Asia by sailing west. When Columbus landed in the Caribbean, he didn't just discover a new world. He handed Spain the keys to the greatest empire in human history. The Spanish conquistadors who followed Columbus were a unique breed of adventurer. They weren't professional soldiers or government officials, but rather artisans, traders, and lesser nobles seeking fortune and glory. What they achieved defied all logic and probability. Hernán Cortés landed in Mexico with just 600 men, and through a combination of military skill, political cunning, and devastating disease, conquered the mighty Aztec Empire. The treasures of Tenochtitlan flowed back to Spain, funding further expeditions and European wars. Not to be outdone, Francisco Pizarro conquered the even wealthier Inca Empire with an even smaller force. At Cajamarca in 1532, fewer than 200 Spaniards captured the Inca Emperor Atahualpa, precipitating the collapse of a civilization that ruled millions across the Andes. The silver mines of Potosi alone would make Spain the wealthiest nation on earth, as convoys of treasure ships crossed the Atlantic under Spanish flags. Under Charles I, who was also Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, Spain reached heights of power that seemed almost supernatural. Under Charles I, Spain colonized big parts of the Americas and established itself as the first modern global empire. Spanish territories stretched from the Philippines to Peru, from the Netherlands to Naples. The Spanish Empire was literally the first on which the sun never set. But this golden age reached its zenith under Charles's son, Philip II. During his reign, Spain reached the height of its influence and power. Spanish culture flowered in the golden age of art and literature, producing immortal figures like Cervantes, Velázquez, and Lope de Vega. El Escorial, Philip's massive palace monastery complex, embodied Spanish power and Catholic devotion. Yet Philip's reign also revealed the empire's fatal weaknesses. The Spanish Armada's defeat by England in 1588 shattered the myth of Spanish invincibility. Constant warfare in the Netherlands, France, and the Mediterranean drained the treasury faster than American silver could fill it. Spain was suffering from what economists now call the resource curse, too much easy wealth that destroyed incentives for economic development. The 17th century brought what Spanish historians call the decline. Weak kings like Philip III and Philip IV left governance to corrupt favorites while Spain's enemies grew stronger. The devastating 30 Years' War exhausted Spanish resources, while rebellions in Catalonia and Portugal challenged royal authority. When the last Spanish Habsburg, Charles II, died childless in 1700, he left behind an empire in crisis. The War of Spanish Succession that followed nearly tore Spain apart. French and Austrian claimants battled for the Spanish throne, while Britain, the Netherlands, and other powers intervened to prevent any one nation from becoming too powerful. The war ended with Philip V, a French Bourbon, on the Spanish throne, but at a terrible cost. Spain lost Gibraltar to Britain, its Italian territories to Austria, and its great power status seemed finished forever. The 18th century Bourbon kings tried to modernize Spain through enlightened reforms. They built roads, encouraged industry, and reformed education. King Charles III even expelled the powerful Jesuit order and attempted to break the nobility's stranglehold on land ownership. But these reforms came too late and went too far for conservative Spanish society. Everything changed again in 1808 when Napoleon invaded Spain and placed his brother Joseph on the throne. The Spanish people rose in furious revolt, beginning what they called the War of Independence, but which history knows as the Peninsular War. Spanish guerrillas, aided by British forces under the Duke of Wellington, waged a brutal campaign that would drain French resources and contribute to Napoleon's downfall. But the war's aftermath brought new chaos. While Spain fought France, its American colonies began declaring independence. Led by heroes like Simón Bolívar and José de San Martín, the independence movement succeeded beyond anyone's imagination. By 1825, Spain had lost virtually its entire American empire, retaining only Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. The 19th century became Spain's time of troubles. Carlist wars between competing claimants to the throne devastated the countryside. Military pronunciamientos, coup, became routine as generals seized power with depressing regularity. The brief First Spanish Republic collapsed into chaos, while the restoration of the monarchy under Alfonso X brought only temporary stability. The final blow to Spain's imperial pretensions came in 1898, the Spanish-American War of 1898, which Spain lost to the United States, cost Spain its last major colonies. The disaster of '98 forced Spanish intellectuals to confront their nation's decline and search for renewal. The early 20th century brought both hope and tragedy. King Alfonso X presided over a cultural renaissance and economic growth, but political polarization grew increasingly dangerous. The Spanish Civil War erupted in 1936, pitting Republicans against nationalists in a conflict that became a rehearsal for World War II. International brigades fought alongside the Republic, while Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy supported Francisco Franco's nationalists. Franco's victory in 1939 ushered in nearly 4 decades of dictatorship. The early years were marked by repression, autarky, and isolation. But by the 1960s, Spain was experiencing rapid economic growth. Tourism brought foreign currency and ideas, while Spanish workers migrated to other European countries and returned with new perspectives. Franco died on November 20th, 1975, and Juan Carlos I was crowned King of Spain on November 22nd. The young king surprised everyone by leading Spain's transition to democracy rather than perpetuating the dictatorship. The transition was remarkably peaceful, earning international admiration and establishing Spain as a model for democratic change. Since 1975, Spain has transformed itself once again. It joined NATO and the European Union, modernized its economy, and became a major cultural force. Spanish cinema, literature, and architecture gained international recognition, while Spanish companies expanded globally. The Spain of today bears little resemblance to the isolated dictatorship Franco left behind. From prehistoric cave painters to modern European democrats, From Visigothic warriors to conquistadors to Civil War fighters, Spain's history is ultimately about survival and reinvention. This is a nation that has been conquered by Romans, Visigoths, and Muslims, that built and lost the world's greatest empire, endured civil wars and dictatorships, yet emerged as a vibrant democracy and cultural powerhouse. The story of Spain proves that no matter how far a nation falls, how completely it seems defeated, the human capacity for renewal and transformation can overcome any obstacle. Today's Spain, with its regional diversity, democratic institutions, and cultural confidence, represents the latest chapter in this ongoing epic. And if history teaches us anything about Spain, it's that the next chapter is likely to be just as dramatic and unexpected as all those that came before. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and share it with your friends. I also create videos on the history of different countries and empires, so check out those too.